27th, 2019 joint meeting of the Western Lane Ambulance District and
Slop Valley Fire and Rescue. It's got to be Larry's fault. And Slop Valley Fire and Rescue.
okay.
Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's like around
And could we establish roll calls, please?
Director Russell? Here. Director Childs?
Here.
Director Farnsworth?
Here.
Director Webb?
Here.
Director Yesley?
Here.
Director Hickson?
Here.
Director Phillips?
Here.
Director Green?
Here.
Director Burns?
Yes.
And Director Carnahan?
Yes.
All right, well, the first order of business tonight is the official pinning of our brand new fire and EMS chief. So, Chief Schick, if you would join me in the front, and is your wife present?
She is.
I see her in the back. She's going to pin you, right? I'm going to give this to you. Be very careful.
Do you want me to stand back here?
It's not the first.
All right, this is official process here, so I'm going to read the swearing-in oath, and this, would you please repeat everything that I say? I state your name.
I, Michael Schick,
As a member of the Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue,
as a member of Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Oregon,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Oregon,
and I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
and I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
discharge the duties of Fire and EMS Chief of Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue and Western Lane Ambulance District,
discharge the duties of the Fire and EMS Chief of Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue and Western Lane Ambulance District,
and I pledge to carry out the duties of the Fire and EMS Chief to the best of my ability,
and I pledge to carry out the duties of the Fire and EMS Chief to the best of my ability,
and will honor and respect the mission, goals, purpose, and rules of the fire department.
and will honor and respect the mission, goals, purpose, and rules of the fire department.
Today I recognize the badge of my position as a symbol of public faith, and I accept it in public trust.
Today, I recognize the badge of my position as a symbol of public faith, and I accept it as a public trust.
And I hereby dedicate myself to the citizens and visitors of Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue,
And I hereby dedicate myself to the citizens and visitors of Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue,
to ensure their safety and in the discharge of my duties, so help me God.
to ensure their safety in the discharge of my duties, so help me God.
Congratulations and welcome. By no better person.
Yeah, so this is the first time And now, as my first official act, I get to swear in some brand new firefighters. We have some new firefighters in the room. Come on up here. You're going to go through the same process. It's a little bit shorter oath. State your name.
I, Jason,
Brandon Sutherland.
do solemnly swear to do my duty as a firefighter for Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue to the best of my ability,
Do solemnly swear to do my duty as a firefighter for Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue to the best of my ability.
to serve my commanding officers with respect and loyalty,
To serve my commanding officers with respect and loyalty.
to serve the citizens of our community with compassion, courage, and integrity,
To serve the citizens of the community with compassion, courage, and integrity.
to represent my fire department and community with honor and dignity both on and off duty,
To represent my fire department and community with honor and dignity, both on and off duty.
and to uphold the laws and constitutions of the United States of America, the state of Oregon, and the communities we protect.
And to uphold the laws and constitutions of the United States of America, the state of Oregon, and communities we protect.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you. Okay, so,
Congratulations very much.
and this is fun. My second act is to swear in some brand new lieutenants. We have 2 brand new lieutenants here. Raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Jerry Ward,
Do solemnly swear to do my duty as lieutenant for Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue to the best of my ability,
do solemnly swear to do my duty as a lieutenant for Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue to the best of my ability,
to serve my commanding officers with respect and loyalty,
to serve my commanding officers with respect and loyalty,
to serve the citizens of our community with compassion, courage, and integrity,
to serve the citizens of our community with compassion, courage, and integrity,
to represent my fire department and community with honor and dignity both on and off duty,
to represent my fire department and community with honor and dignity both on and off duty,
and to uphold the laws and constitutions of the United States of America, the state of Oregon, and the communities we protect.
and to uphold the laws and constitutions of the United States of America, the state of Oregon, and the communities we protect.
So help me God.
So help me God.
So now our new lieutenants will be pinned by significant others.
And ops.
Captain Miller, could you join me in front of the room? So, I'm going to turn my back to you guys. Captain Miller, about a year and a half ago, embarked on a little journey that is very important to the district and myself personally. Higher education and the fire service, we honor our past and our future by continuing education. And Captain Miller diligently achieved his associate degree in applied science for fire science technology just like a week ago. And I wanted to congratulate him. This is a really big step, and he took a speech class, so
Just gracefully bow.
so thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have some additional recognitions, and I think I'm going to stay behind the microphone and not draw too much attention to myself. But both districts are ending their fiscal years and also the election term, and we have a few directors who have served the public extremely well who will be leaving us after this meeting. And we wanted to acknowledge them and thank them for their service through both districts. So I'm going to go first since I'm the one talking. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great.
All right. First off, I'm going to stand. Tony, would you mind standing up? Tony Phillips served the last 4 years, July 1st, 2015 through June 30th, 2019. Just like tomorrow. Tomorrow. Okay. During your first 2 years of service, you served as Secretary of Treasury. So, Tony, thank you very much for your service to our district and to all of us here. So, congratulations.
I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the awesome help from the staff and all the volunteers. It's been sometimes trying, but a pleasure to be able to serve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, actually, our next director has an esteemed career in first responder, as a first responder both in fire and EMS. So there's a very nice script here I'm going to read. Director Carnahan was hired as a paramedic for Western Lane Ambulance District in 1986. In 2010, he was promoted to paramedic supervisor and held that position until he retired in 2014. In 86, Director Carnahan became a volunteer firefighter for Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue. For 30 years, he was a battalion chief in charge of stations 5, 6, and 8 south of the bridge. During his last 4 years with Siuslaw Valley Fire Rescue, he was in charge of recruitment and retention. Director Carnahan served one term, July 1st, 2015 through June 30th of 2019, and during that time he has served as vice president throughout his term. So John, Director Carnahan, thank you very much. It's been an honor to serve you. We have one of the director, I will just publicly acknowledge he couldn't be here this evening, so if you know him and see him in the community, please congratulate him. Woody Woodbury, who retired early from the board about 90 days ago, has served through the last term, and we thank him for his service. So thank you very much.
And we also have tonight from Western Lane Ambulance District, Mr. Dick Childs. Dick, if you'd stand up, please. Yes, sir. Who's been with us for 2 terms, and I believe he started in 2011. So you've been 8 years with the board, 1 year as secretary treasurer, and 3 years as last 3 years as vice president. So we greatly appreciate your service. I know speaking on behalf of everybody on the board, which will allow them to skewer you later in the break. We appreciate your service. You're the type that when you speak, everybody listens. You have great wisdom, and we appreciate it on your behalf, your service to the community through Western Lane Ambulance District Board. So we have this plaque to present to you to thank you for your service. Thanks.
Yeah.
Now I believe we're going to take about a 5-minute break, and we can celebrate and talk with all our award recipients for about 5 minutes. So we'll take a 5-minute break.
So I think we're going to resume the meeting, so if you wouldn't mind, either stand or have a seat, whatever you'd like, appreciate that. Turn this over temporarily to Chief.
Thank you. We have one more firefighter to swear in. She wasn't here before, so we'd like to do that this time. I state your name.
Shannon Viesca.
Do solemnly swear to do my duty as a firefighter for Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue to the best of my ability.
Do solemnly swear to do my duty as a firefighter for Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue to the best of my ability.
To serve my commanding officers with respect and loyalty.
To serve my commanding officers with respect and loyalty.
To serve the citizens of our community with compassion, courage, and integrity.
To serve the citizens of our community with compassion, courage, and integrity.
To represent my fire department and community with honor and dignity, both on and off duty.
To represent my fire department and community with honor and dignity, both on and off duty.
And to uphold the laws and constitutions of the United States of America, the state of Oregon, and the communities we protect.
To uphold the laws and the Constitution of the United States of America and the state of Oregon and the communities we protect.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Yeah, we're going to do our other firefighters as well. The man just showed up.
Well, your Amazon Prime. That trophy.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have a presentation by Kathy Smith regarding the mental health crisis team proposal. Kathy, come on up. I think up here.
Where would you like me?
Put you right in the middle.
Okay.
Wherever you're most comfortable.
Okay. Would you like me to face out to the audience? Is that our, okay. All right, great, that sounds good.
Sorry,
That's okay. You want me to be behind you? Okay, all right. Okay. So I'm Kathy Smith. I'm a planning and business development consultant that works in Western Lane County a lot on various health and mental health projects. And today I'm here because I've been working with a group of mental health providers and first responders and folks in this room. We gathered together, Lori, Chief Turner, and Matt, among others, who participated in a collaborative that was initiated by Lane County Behavioral Health. They began to convene a group of partners in very late, very early 2019. And our purpose today is to come here to ask for your discussion and a decision request for your organization to serve as a fiscal agent for a Lane County Behavioral Health funding for mental health global crisis response. I'll tell you a little more about what that is and the scope of service and who the partners would be, and then we can open for questions. We distributed a proposal, which I'll hit the high points of the proposal, and then there's some attachments to the proposal that we'll probably want to look at more closely. So just some high points from the proposal. What mobile crisis services are when mental health services for people in crisis are provided by mental health professionals who respond to the crisis on-site at the location in the community where the crisis arises. And they provide a face-to-face therapeutic response. And the goal, frequently, these folks in mental health crisis are met by law enforcement as opposed to mental health professionals. And they're sometimes incarcerated, and they're sometimes taken to the emergency room department and held for their own safety. In both cases, it's not optimal. Many times the sense with mobile crisis is that the situation could be de-escalated and cost the overall health system, the individual, and the community overall much less in terms of dollars and also just human capital costs. So the proposal is that your organization would propose to serve as the applicant agency and the fiscal agency for mobile mental health crisis response, serving residents in Western Lane County. And the partner organizations are listed on page 2 of the proposal. These individuals from all of these organizations participated in the development of this proposal. The scope of services, three primary things for the scope of service. The first is mental health crisis response. That's that face-to-face and telephone screening and assessments that result in written recommendations and referrals and coordination to access of community-based services. Second part is program management, providing for recruiting, training, and staffing of the mobile crisis workers, the documentation, reporting, and evaluation and budget management that comes along with that. Some portions of those services can be delegated to other community partners, and that's the design that we've conceived. We'll go over in a moment. And the third scope is to have network partners collaborate to convene the Western Lane Partnership together to strengthen the program, to adapt it and adjust as we learn how it will work here. So I'm going to mention one challenge that Western Lane has that's very unique to us, and that is the size of Western Lane. You all know this better than I do, and Chief Turner drew a nice picture for me on a little postcard once to just demonstrate this. But we know that it's very large and rural, and it has some very remote communities. Florence, Mapleton, Dune City, the upriver communities include Deadwood and Swiss Home, and many unincorporated areas. So you know right now that Sisseton Valley provides response to about 14,000 people over 100 square miles. Western Lane Ambulance provides EMS services to about over 17,000 people over about 980 square miles. And the Florence Police Department provides public safety to 8,600 people within the Florence city limits, as well as being home to the Westling Public Safety Answering 911, the dispatch center, for dispatching all the public safety first responders through a 540 square mile area. The challenge for mental health mobile crisis response is the different jurisdictions. So within Florence proper, we have public safety and we have crisis response. Outside of Florence City proper, we have the unincorporated areas that have challenges with public safety response. And the reason this is a problem is that in a mobile crisis program, you don't go out alone. You always go with 2 responders for the safety of the mental health mobile crisis responders, as well as for the person calling and the residents involved in that call. So public safety backup is very important, particularly in the early times as we learn how to how to do this program together. So that's a situation that we have. I'm gonna ask you to, do you want to add anything to that, or anybody that's been involved at this point, clarify any points?
If there's a question.
Okay, it's okay? All right, thanks. So, the model that we're looking, well, the model that Lane County Behavioral Health came to us with was a suggestion to look at cahoots. Are you familiar with cahoots in the metro area? So there are reasons that they have a great model in some ways, and there are some reason it doesn't work for us. They deploy, always 2 people go out. They're sort of a roving 24-hour mobile unit that addresses many things besides a response to mental health crisis calls. Our proposal is to adapt their training and their models, but to respond to mental health crisis calls and not to have a 24-hour mobile unit roaming the streets. That makes sense for the size of our population. So I'd like to ask you to take a look at, first of all, there are some attachments that came along. They're marked attachments A through D up in the corner. And I'm going to have you take a look at first attachment B. It's a flow chart. Looks like this. And this shows the integration of the many partners that would be involved in this. And I won't go over it box by box, but it shows a flow chart that a call comes in. A call is received by the first responder, and we would see that as our dispatch based in the Florence Police Department. The first responder is dispatched to the scene, and once the first responder is on the scene, they complete the on-scene assessment, and then there's a decision, should mental health mobile crisis response, is it indicated on the scene? And if it's yes, then the first responder has a 24/7 cell contact with a mobile crisis response lead, and the mobile crisis responder worker comes to the scene and responds as indicated. There's another decision if the mental health is stabilized. If it's yes, then the mental health response worker arranges for the initial community health follow-up, documents that, and makes the preliminary connections to community mental health follow-up. These folks could be patients of options, patients of Peace Health Medical Group, or have services elsewhere. If they're not stabilized, it's the scenario is a decision. Are they transported to the Peace Harbor Medical Center Emergency Department? And if that's the case, they're taken for those reasons. There's a sub-process and discharge. Again, it moves out. These are folks that are part of our community. They move out into the community and have a community response. So that's an overview of what the team designed in terms of response with the various partners across the community. We could go on and on about that one, but that's in a nutshell our process.
May I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
This flow that you shared with us, is this exactly what Cahoots' model looks like as far as the process?
It draws strongly on it, but it's adapted for our community. They have a deeper bench for response than we do right now.
I think we've had a chance to look and talk about this long before tonight, so this
Okay.
I think most everyone has supported this. We'll get to that. But it does also feel a little bit like we're diffusing the problem and kind of kicking the can down the street, with the mental health issue. It's a crisis response. We deal with diffusing the problem, check them into the hospital, they discharge them, they're back out living or on the street causing problems again. It's a cycle. So is there something where Cahoots and the Eugene model and this model can deal with creating a solution to the problem?
I'm glad you asked that question because we spent a lot of time on the committee talking about there's mobile crisis response, but we don't want to just kick the can down the road. One of the elements in our proposed approach, trying to see if it's captured easily here in the one of our elements is, and proposed in the budget, is to embed a full-time social worker at the emergency department and Peace Health Medical Center so that there is in-depth follow-up, in-depth case management and connection. And I think that's the key intervention that would assist us. That doesn't exist now. There's some long stays in the emergency department. Anything else?
Kathy, could I?
Yeah.
So is the model, if I got it again, is for the police to be the first responder?
The police receive the dispatch call and they make a judgment call. That is similar
So
to
they
what.
almost triage on it?
Yes, they're triage and
Okay.
yeah, right.
And then is there, kind of following up on Ron's question, there's a broader behavioral health plan. This is a piece, but is there also a broader plan to have behavioral health for follow-up and things like that in the area? This is a part of a bigger plan, really, right? It's kind of a piece, or is it a start?
I think I would call this probably as a piece and a start. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Lori?
I think the fact that all these different agencies have been meeting, that's part of going to be the follow-up, is options, counseling program here in town, SOS, which deals with a lot of homeless people and a lot of domestic violence and other kind of crises. All these different agencies, there's probably 6 of them, and Western Lane and Police Department and a couple other agencies. And the plan is that we're all going to be kind of interconnected in providing services and follow-up. And we're going to continue to meet monthly on a regular basis, that the monthly meetings aren't going to end, to talk about problem cases, who can kick in what, who's going to provide what services. So that's going to be more the broader follow-up after a de-escalation, in the home. Then the social worker would help coordinate that in the ER, and we'd have our monthly meetings.
So it sounds like it's an opportunity to move away from police show up. There's someone who's having a mental issue. The only answer we have is we have to take him to jail. Whereas in this case, on that scene, they would be able to make a judgment call and say, this would work better with someone who can specifically deal with this person's mental health issue, and potentially forego a trip to either the hospital or the police station. So that person would hopefully move them in a direction towards mental health as opposed to a direction towards a jail cell or directly to the hospital.
De-escalate and connect to community services.
Right.
Since you've talked about this more than before today, you know that we're kind of adapting. You have a platform with your CST model. That's a pretty beautiful platform that this mental health mobile crisis response can be put on top of. That sort of a response and that continuing collaboration amongst the whole community makes it a more sustainable and I think, learning and adapting sort of a model, so I think it is a start in that way. Thanks, Lloyd. I'll have you take a look at what attachment A now. It's this column, arrows with arrows on the top. And we're proposing 3 phases. The first phase would begin, and these are just the major tasks of this phases. We hope to get some agreements and finalize the funding sometime about now. And then we would access the cahoots for technical assistance around the mobile crisis worker hiring and training late in the summer. There would be education and outreach to multiple key audiences. Some of the just-in-time audiences, of course, are the providers and first responders, but that's ongoing and involves audiences from school-age children to community partners and more broadly. And this is a key element of our proposal. In phase 1, we would start where we have the services. Let's get started and implement mobile crisis response in Florence City. And we would build out the CST model for the day-to-day operational management and hope that that would begin in the fall, about September-ish. And then we would increase the crisis response staffing, hiring a social worker for the Peace Harbor Medical Center ED, also about the same time. And we would continue to convene the partnership each month, leveraging the structure of the Western Lane Health Network, a collaborative that already exists. We meet on a routine basis. We have shared interest around behavioral health on a broader level for the community. And then we would just keep gathering baseline information and improving. So that's phase 1, rollout in Florence City. Phase 2 would be to continue all of that and to work to expand the crisis response for those, to address the jurisdictional, geographical issues that I talked about early on. And then we would also identify and pursue any local development of high-value mental health crisis resources. So we're learning what we need and where we have gaps, and we would build out and try to leverage the network funding to do that. And then phase 3 is moving toward, we hope, a sustainable and ever-learning community model where we would look at the value on an investment from the baseline where we started, what's happening. Not that we won't be looking along the way, but we want to do an in-depth look and establish a sustained and more diverse funding base. So those are in big swatches, the work plan over those 3 phases.
So if I understand it right, there is and I think Chief Turner may have mentioned it before, that there is some sort of a base level grant or something that's available to help
There is.
get this going.
There is. The county grant is, so I'll take you to attachment D because that's our preliminary, that's our budget estimate for those 3 phases. And we don't have a specific and finite amount of money yet from the county. They're working on it. They're excited about our program. We're the trailblazers for rural mobile mental crisis. We were ready, we stepped up, and so I'm hearing all sorts of good things. But what we understand, this is just an informal email, is that they have about $277,000 of ongoing funds to support this project. And they have close to $1 million for startup funds, but those startup funds are shared across all the rural communities in Lane County. So Western Lane is the first up, and we would have a portion of that. So the exact amount, not yet clear. But yes, the Lane County Behavioral Health has a grant. A mobile middle crisis and rural access are 2 priorities for the state and therefore the county.
So when you say ongoing, you mean on an annual basis of $280,000?
We are clarifying that
Okay.
as we speak. So, yeah. And then attachment D is our estimated budget and the items that you see there. Phase 1 is where we're focused on Florence City proper, and then you see a bump in Phase 2 because we're working to address that public safety response in the unincorporated areas in the full Western Lane service area.
Kathy, and following up on the timing too, is it a 3-year grant then, or we're still figuring out? Is there a time period the grant runs out?
It's a 3-year grant.
Okay.
You know, the county was very interested in having us up and running or by July 1, and they still are. They told me that they would carry over funds. They're backed up in contracting, so we just have an administrative backup on their end. But yeah, 3 years is what we're looking at. And when it says ongoing, I need clarification still that is that ongoing beyond the 3 years, so we're getting clarification on that.
And the intent is to show the value of the program anyway for 3 years and get alternative funding during that period.
Okay.
Okay.
So based on that 287,000-ish, so the first year, it looks like it would be covered under that, the costs of this would be covered under that grant. And then in the following years, we would have to sort of decide where the other 100 and something thousand would come from in additional funding.
Well, yes, and remember, there's also the $1 million for startup cost. So in our phased approach, our working assumption is that we would draw from the startup fund in order to implement this and give it true rural, service area coverage. We would look to that, and then as Rick pointed out, for those funds initially, and then as Rick pointed out, if we have cost savings,
Right.
And we can prove a value on investment,
We could carry it over.
we can carry it over.
Okay.
You indicated, Ms. Smith, phase 1, or are you talking year 1?
They've become synonymous now. Year 1 and phase 1 are the same thing. Yeah. We had a preliminary proposal earlier, but just with the backup, I just shifted it to year 1 instead of phase 1. Phase 1 was going to be, through about May of next year, but I think we should just look at fiscal years and keep it simple to administer.
Kathy, forgive me, because I haven't been involved in the conversations on this before, but the $1 million startup fund, year 1, where does that come from?
My understanding is that the Oregon Performance Plan, so it's funds from the state that are distributed to the counties, that are distributed for the purpose of rural mental health mobile crisis response.
No responsibility on us to fund any of that at this point in time.
Not at this point in time.
I have a question for Chief Schick and Tina as well. I know you spoke about this, but presumably Western Line Fire and EMS would be the fiscal agent as defined here once that's formed. If this gets off the ground and running before that, would that then temporarily rest with Sizemore Valley?
We could do it that way, that would be the plan.
Okay. And so I see on this budget, there's this admin fee for the fiscal agent, 10%. Honestly, did the two of you have some input on how they arrived at that amount of money?
No, that was just a general suggestion. We were looking at what typical overhead would be, and that was about 10%.
I think about on the social need, this isn't, in my personal opinion, this is not a vote, this is my opinion. This is an absolutely wonderful and needed service in this community. My only concern is the administrative burden, mostly on you, but on the agency, the fiscal agent, and are we getting fairly compensated for that burden?
Yeah, that's a good question. Without, actually running the program.
Yeah,
And
and maybe in a year or 2 or 3, we kind of figure that out.
Yes.
We did draw that from experience worked with Rick and a group on a large federal grant, and Peace Harbor the foundation took a 10% de minimis, and so we drew from that experience to drop in at 10% here. But your idea about revisiting after we learn for the subsequent years is a good one.
We'll just see if Tina can do her regular job first. If she can't, have to hire more and charge it.
Other questions or comments yet?
I just
one thing that concerns me. I know the rural areas around here. And police, they're really, there's very little resources to draw from. County sheriff's is understaffed, state police is understaffed, and they will only work certain hours. So there's a lot of area that triage is going to have to take place in 911 center to protect people. And that would mean not dispatching fire, not dispatching. They're going to have to make some decisions at dispatch. And I would assume that you have a lot of input into that.
Well, one of the difficulties with this is that when I was with Eugene, I was there at the inception of Cahoots. And it wound up being just a fantastic resource for the city and the whole Valley area. And they call on the radio if they need help. They're self-dispatching to calls, which would be amazing. And it really freed up the resources both for the fire department and the police department. One of the things that we've spent a lot of time with is that the police resources outside the jurisdictional boundaries of Florence are very poor. And the thing that we need to do is that, and the thing that I've seen in the past is that the Cahoots model, whatever that may be for us once we develop it here in Florence or in the Western Lane County, one of our absolute priorities is the protection of personnel. And so the beauty of the model is that usually first responders are at the scene first, and then they call the mental health mobile crisis response unit to come assist. So they're already there. What we start running into is who's going to be there to be with them. And so one of the things I was terribly concerned about is that I love the idea of having this service. As soon as it leaves the city, then I get really nervous. And I've worked with the beauty of a couple of things. I'm working really hard with the new sheriff because he's really excited about everything. That'll end soon. One of the things is that this has huge potential for making this into something that's a huge community service, something that he can purport to the county. The state has it up in funding, so I'm going to hit up the superintendent for the state police because they also would benefit in a huge process or being able to say we're participating in this program and this is a great rollout of this program. But it's really important to just make sure that our personnel are safe no matter where they are. And in my little self-centered world, I want to make sure that the appropriate resources are going to the appropriate places as opposed to, say, the city trying to cover it. Because that's going to be impossible to do. The thing that I like about this, we have a multi-phase plan that Kathy's worked out. We'll get to see how it works. And I also know that we have plenty of business right here in Florence. And we'll get to see how this works. And we will absolutely highlight any positive activity that we have going on this, because one of the things that I see that's also huge about this is it helps residents of Florence. So these are Florence-centric people, Western Lane County-centric people. Very frequently, that's who we're serving, and that's a great start to help better our community and bring these people the services they need and get them lined up. So I've got some great hopes for this, but that first year is so we can offer the full protection of a police department. After that, we need to step carefully as to where we're going to go next.
I'm most concerned about what strings are going to be attached to the contract.
Tell me.
I've experienced with grants with governments that you get this for several years, but you're committed to 5 years. And what's going to happen if something happens in the meantime? And it may not apply to this, but there's always something that you're committed to that you have to hold on to. And what if something happens a year down the line or 2 years down the line?
This is our proposal, and if and entering in with the county who's enthusiastic and seen early versions of this. They haven't been the first one to see like sort of this in its entirety. Then we have a conversation to have with them. Here's our proposal, and here are our conditions and terms. So if we're concerned
And
about.
then they will give you their conditions and terms.
Right.
And I think that, for me, that would be a deal breaker moving forward, but I'm very supportive of this program. I think it's exactly what we need.
There's a need
serve
to
the
it,
small
but-
population, but yeah, we can't financially support it ourselves.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I agree, I think it's a great program. We have to think about the questions that we're going to be asked by our community. And I think Alan's pointing at one, which is, say, after 3 years, the program's going pretty well, and then maybe at the end of year 3, we're like, well, I don't know. Are we
Can't
going to be
sustain it.
able to either sustain it or decide, you know, we're going to have to cancel it? If that happens, we just want to make sure we're not stuck in something that we
Understood.
can't get out.
Okay.
Not that I'm trying to be a dark cloud.
No, you have to anticipate. Yeah.
So when you first came, it sounded like you wanted an action from us, but I don't think we have enough information at this point to take an action to, other than just vote support. So what's the call?
Actually, it's just that you agree to move forward to explore this opportunity. There will be an impact on the district. I don't think it's going to be a tremendous impact.
Well, I would make, under that, I would make a motion under Western Wayne Ambulance District that we continue to move forward with pursuing this as an opportunity.
I'm not even on your board, Michael, but yes.
And I'll second it.
So your first and second on the ambulance side, before we vote, do you want to do?
Well,
Or do we want more?
I think you give it a
more
first.
discussion or more presentation tonight before we just shut everything down. Did you have more to present, Kathy? Or?
I think I hit the high points. Is there anything else that you would like to underscore?
I think it might be nice to just sort of highlight maybe what Lori's role is going to be in this. She's going to be a key player in this. Sort of maybe give a brief 2 seconds about your role.
Can I sit here
If you
and
can do
get
it.
up? What we've talked about in the committee meetings, and Kathy and I have met together and also with the training agent over at Cahoots several times about this, is the reason we thought it would fit well under CST is because we're already doing mobile crisis response for sudden death, for fire. It's just kind of extending expanding the parameters of what we now respond to in terms of emergency response. Cahoots has been doing this really well for 30 years, so they're going to be doing our training the first year up to 3 years, but we're thinking year 2, certainly by 3, we would do train the trainer and be able to train our own people. So we're thinking that I would increase my hours. Of course, my hours would now be under this program, not so much under SVFR and all that. So in some ways, I think it would alleviate some of those. We don't have a huge budget now, but what little we have. And it's just going to be an expansion of what I do now in terms of the scheduling, more extensive training, of course, in mental health, that kind of thing. The model that Cahoots has is that they have 2 vans on the street 24/7. I mean, they've been around for 30 years. And they have a EMT or higher medical professional and a mental health paraprofessional on all vans. We obviously don't have that capacity, so it would be more through calls through dispatch, either from fire, ambulance, or police. And our second person, our safety backup, would be with the first responders until it's obvious to us that it's de-escalating and it's working in a direction where things are safe and we're going to be able to resolve this at the house. And then hopefully then we could free them up to get back on the streets and do what they need to do. If it continues to stay escalated or continues to escalate, then they will do what they do now, which is transport to the ER or to jail. So it feels like a very smooth extension and expansion of what we do now. And I don't know, I'm excited about it, but I don't know if you guys have specific questions. I'm not sure. Having been a part of this from the beginning, I don't know what the questions are in your mind in terms of what's been discussed and arranged.
think generally, where we're at tonight is looking for an idea to move forward. You know, we're not approving a budget, approving a plan, it's approving the idea of how we take the next step. So I think from my perspective, I'm good with that. But thanks, Lloyd.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor on our side of the Western Lane. You want to repeat the motion one more time?
Just a motion to continue to pursue this opportunity and until we have it to a point where we can take a formal proposal with budget and understand what we're doing.
And Cindy, you seconded that motion? Okay, so we want to do any more discussion from Mr. Lane? I would just say I'm really amazed with the partnership too. That's such a great, and I hope we can play a role in this as a partner. So good job pulling that all together. Okay, roll call please.
Director Russell?
Yes.
Director Childs?
Yes.
Director Farnsworth?
Yes.
Director Wood?
Yes.
Director Yesney?
Yes.
All right. Larry, ventriloquist. No, besides the life fire and rescue, any further discussion? If not, then can motion. That would mirror something similar to Mike Webb.
I'll make that one.
We have a motion that's similar to Mike Webb's.
Second it.
We have a second that's similar to Mike Webb's. All in favor, and I say because we can vote this way, we will. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed.
Very good. Thank you, excellent.
Thank you. I will talk to the county tomorrow and keep you all posted. Thanks.
Just a quick question. I noticed that Downey was on here to be determined.
I've made a contact, but their person hasn't been able to join the group yet, so I just didn't insert that person's name until I had a chance to communicate with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks, Kathy, very much. Okay, on to minutes. Sites of Valley Fire and Rescue, we had the meeting minutes from May 29th and then special joint meeting from June 12th. As directors of Sites of Valley Fire and Rescue, had a chance to review the minutes. Are there any questions or discussion?
No, sir.
If not, entertain a motion to approve both minutes.
So move, Mr. Green.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
With enthusiasm.
Yes.
All those in favor to approve both the May 29th and June 12th minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Very good, and we have a similar approval of minutes of regular meeting on May 23rd and a special meeting on June 12th. If everybody had a chance to review the minutes, are there any questions, comments? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve, let's approve both sets, please.
I'll make that motion to approve the minutes from 5/23/19 and 6/12/19.
Okay, the first and Dick? Second. You second? All right. First and a second, any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Director Russell?
Yes.
Director Childs?
Yes.
Director Farnsworth? Director Webb?
Yes.
Director Yesney?
Yes. All right.
All right, this is our section for public comment. Before we address this, both Saginaw Valley Fire and Rescue and Western One Ambulance District recognize that the boards serve the public, were voted in, and we are here to address the questions and the needs of the public. However, I think that the ability that we've granted in the past to ask questions throughout the meeting really disrupts the continuity of the meeting. So from this evening forward, unless there is a change going forward, but we're going to state that this section of the meeting is where any public comment will be heard, and there will be no questions or interaction during the presentation thereafter. These agendas and packets are published well in advance of the meeting, so please, if you have a question or a concern and a question for the board, please read it and come prepared. Or if you hear something during the meeting, make note and come next month with your question. So at this point, this is the opportunity for the public to speak to the board of either board for any item on the agenda or not on the agenda. The maximum time for public comment will be 30 minutes, and 3 minutes will be allocated to each speaker. Do we have any public comment this evening? Being none, we will close the public comment section and move on with the agenda. And that would be Saginaw Valley monthly financials. Any discussion before we look to ratify the bills?
So I just had a few things to mention on the Sayusla Valley balance sheet. It shows that we are 65,000 ahead of last year. And that, oh no, sorry, the 65,000 was the SAFER grant, the accounts receivable. Sorry, I don't have my packet right in front of me, but the accounts receivable that said 65,000, that was received.
Okay.
So we're working on the next reimbursement. Also, in the bank, we show almost 2 times the amount of cash that we had at this time last year.
Is that because of the
Excuse me?
conflict? Because of conflict?
Complex and grants. And that 11 months in, we should be tracking at 92% on the expenses in the budget versus actual. And the personnel services are tracking at a little over 87%. And when I have the materials and services for operations and admin together, that's tracking just below 75%. So everything's tracking well.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you. We're still watching expenses through the last month. We are doing some capital outlay expenditures right now to get in before the end of the fiscal year. And then moving over to the Western Lane financials, there is on the balance sheet, it shows about 236,000 up from last year in cash. And also the expenses are tracking real well there. Also on the budget versus actual, personnel services is at about 86%. And materials and services is operations and admin a little over 70%. So it's tracking real well for both districts.
What do you foresee on the cash position change through the end of June? Do you think we're going to start our year end where we projected?
Pretty close. So I will have a little bit more to report on that next month. So those are the few things. I'm just looking at my notes here. Oh, I did transfer the Western Lane Capital Building Fund into the other fund, which is now called the Capital Reserve Fund. So this savings account right now currently gets 0.60 interest, but the district would get 0.75 interest if we changed it into a money market account. So we're looking into that, and I'll come back with more information. So that's all I have on the financials. If you have any questions.
From the fire district, any questions on the financials or the transactions? What I would ask before you look for questions across the aisle. We need to ratify the expenses. Was it 156, I believe, 156, 693.08.
155 to 42.
Yeah, 155, 242, 68 on the agenda.
I have a different agenda.
Do you have a difference on something?
It says 156
I don't
here.
have the encore packet in front of me.
Yeah, well, the expenses on the month of May P&L is 156, 693.08, and that's also what it shows in.
Looks like we're looking at that.
Yeah, the paper copy agenda that's on the table shows 155, but the agenda in the portal on board is 156, and that matches the financial statement.
Oh, okay. I guess this didn't get updated then, so the 156, as long as that matches, where's the profit and loss?
Yeah, page 18 of the packet.
$156,693. I apologize for the paper budget, or paper agenda.
Okay, so that is the correct expense amount, so is there a motion for the ratification of bills?
So moved.
And second? Second, with enthusiasm, thank you, Kevin. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, for the Western Lane side, any questions on the financial statements? Larry, we'll let you go first since you're, no, shaking your head, okay. Anybody else? Any questions? Okay, let's move to the transaction list then. Dina, also thank you for booking the receivables each month. That looks like that's working really well. Any issues on the transaction list? Pages 24 and 25. Not hearing any, entertain a motion to approve the transaction list for May 2019.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, we have first and second. Any further discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Director Russell?
Yes.
Director Childs?
Yes.
Director Farnsworth? Director Webb?
Yes.
Director Yasi?
Yes. Okay, and next we have a review of the status of the Western Lane Fire and EMS Authority. Chief, are you going to take that one?
I am. I made a lot of progress the last 2 weeks. We met with Christine Watson, or had phone conferences with her, 2 phone conferences, and discussed what we needed to do to wrap up all the planning for third entity. And are we okay?
There's just something on the screen.
I don't think you got it. Still.
It's all right.
Sorry.
Larry, are you there?
Hi, Larry.
So we had two phone conferences with her and going over the list of items we needed to complete, and we've made great progress. I sent to her what I hope is final draft today, and then we'd like to meet with the IGA committee as soon as possible, probably within the next week or so, or 2 weeks, just to go over the documents. We've got the IGA, the ordinances, list of employees, job descriptions that have been modified, policies that have been modified. And also get just a brief review by the IGA committee, and then that would go to both boards, and then we'd be ready for our first reading at the July board meeting. So everything is going well. It's looking good. I think we've made fantastic progress this past week, and we're going to be ready for the first reading. I see very, very few problems existing now. Any questions?
Very good.
And I believe we still have the IGA committee. We were looking at that, and we were talking about this the other day. As far as we can tell, it's still active through August. So
Okay. Yeah, I think we set it up to expire on an annual basis, and I think the intent was for the fiscal year.
Yeah, but it all says it's annual basis, and it was approved in August.
So I guess we were going to bring this up later, but I think we are looking at reaffirming and approving the IGA committee, which is made up of 2 members of each board, at the beginning of next year, probably getting on a fiscal year basis with the committee. The issue we have right now is whether it ends June 30th or August. We could argue either one, but I guess we're going to make a proposal that the boards allow the current committee to continue on until the next board meeting, July 25th, when we reappoint members. And that would allow us to do work between now and July 25th if we're going to present or review documents, as Chief has said, that are coming from our attorney and our counsel. So we will, probably put on the agenda to reappoint or appoint new members, or with really quite a few new board members at the July meeting. But we want to make sure that that committee stays functioning up to the July 25th meeting.
So would it make sense to have it from August to August, because then that gives you the chance to appoint your new members in after the elections are over and everything's sworn in? So to me, it makes sense to do August to August, and then that way you can put your new players in, and they have a chance to take over that role.
Do we have a consensus on that, or do we need
I got a question, sir. This IGA committee that you're sharing, that makes up what's being talked about, this third entity?
Well, it's a IGA committee that one of the topics of business that was given to that committee was to look at the third entity when that.
This is the first I've ever heard of it.
Yeah, so we have a charter, and we should get you a copy of the charter, or the charter for the committee.
Who's on it?
There's two members from each, and it's Chairman Green and then Hickson
Okay.
from Siuslaw, and myself and Larry from Western Lane.
Okay.
I think.
Yes.
Might have a copy of it.
That's
Good.
That's all.
So let me see, we'll see if we can get you a copy tonight before you leave.
I'm not gonna wait around that long.
Good, I'll email it to you right now.
And you're not gonna do that either.
No, I'm not gonna. Yeah, good question. So we'll get you a copy of the charter. Yes, Larry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the IGA committee only reviews materials, does homework for the board, and makes recommendations to the full board for their review and decisions. We don't actually make any decisions.
Yeah, it's advisory.
Oh, I know that, because there's only two people on the part.
Not two, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not been delegated to
Oh,
make
no.
decisions to the committee. Yeah, good point. Thanks, Larry. So can we be in agreement that it exists as Chief has suggested, and also Cindy, that the committee run through August 31?
Ms. Russell has a valid point, August 1 to August.
Well, I think we have a document that's dated August and it says it has a 1-year expiration, so I think really we're covered.
Yeah.
And I think taking Cindy's recommendations is the further one, so.
Yeah, great. We'll do it. We'll move along. Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
That's all I have for Thursday.
Okay.
Okay, well, we've got the staff reports, I believe, I lost track of the agenda here.
Yes.
All right, Chief, anything to report on there? We've read through it, but
I think I told you most of what I wanted to report on. Oh, here's one thing. I don't know how many of you are active on Facebook. I am not active on Facebook. I do have a Facebook account. I was informed today that my account was cloned and it was sending out, somebody was sending out friend requests. So if you get a friend request from me, don't click on it.
Interesting.
Okay, well, I'm not active, and so if I turn down your friend request, I apologize. But I don't know how they do that. But, supposedly they're sending out messages that I had won $300,000 in the lottery. I'm sure there was a scam involved in there somehow, unless the money shows up.
You're a good friend to have.
Yeah.
in that case, I'll accept
Got a
it.
lot of friends.
I just want to mention, we're still exploring, I don't know, were you going to talk about GMT?
I haven't, but you can go ahead.
We just, okay, President Yesney and Chief House and I attended a seminar on GDMT, the Ground Emergency Medical Transport, which is a federal program tied in with the state where they will reimburse us for Medicaid calls, our actual cost per call. So right now we get a few $100s for a Medicaid call. This could be $4,000 to $5,000 per call. Again, this is a federal program that's run through the state. Chief House right now is visibly putting all the data together we have to submit. And we're hoping to get about $70,000 a year funding. I think I've talked to a few board members about that on a yearly basis. This is fee for service. Those of you that understand Medicaid, you may have heard that term. There's another part, managed care, which could be upwards of $500,000, $600,000 a year. So we're hoping the state goes that direction. It would be very nice to have that additional income. So we're still working on that. Applications have to be in at the end of July. And so I say we, but Matt's working really hard on getting that. We had, were you going to talk about the training fire? Sorry, no, I got that too. We were very fortunate. We had a house donated for our use, Old Ferry Street, just south of the bridge. And every once in a while this happens. Somebody that wants to demolish a house will donate it to the fire department. It's a very difficult process to do that. That's why my first response is always no. And then if they really want to do it, they really want to work hard, the training division will start working at it. But they have to make sure the house is completely safe. The owner of the house has to make sure there's no asbestos present. And then our training division, Captain Larson and his crew went in and made sure everything was safe. We try and make it as realistic as possible, but we can't. We have to make sure that everything is safe, and that's the right thing to do. We were able to spend a whole day actually setting fires inside his house. And I sent one picture, and there'll be more pictures available. But this was the first time, I think, for a lot of our firefighters to actually see fire, actually be able to put water on the fire and then overhaul it, which is to make sure it's not on the walls and throughout the house. And we were actually able to set 8 different fires in this house, which is very unusual. Typically for a fire, they'll go in and then you ask them not to put a lot of water on it because it puts it out. And you can't relight it. So they had the opportunity to actually put the fires out and then overhaul the scene. And at the end, we stood around and watched it burn down. And that was, again, it was fantastic training. And just want to acknowledge the training division, Captain Larson and his crew. They did a lot of work in getting that ready. And if you get a chance to look at the pictures, in fact, if you look at my Facebook picture now, it's me in front of that house. So.
Is it
It is my real picture.
Legitimate.
That is me. Other than this, my picture showed up in this other account. And one last thing, that we did sell that incident command van that is known, I think everybody knows it as the Big Ugly. But we did sell it through that public service auction, $7,200. We started out at $500, so we were very fortunate. It's not over yet on the story. The individual that won the auction, he did pay for it. He picked it up. He knew the tires were bad. This is a vehicle that is 3,000 miles in the last 20 years, so it hasn't been driven. And he was a little concerned with the condition of transmission and brakes, and even though it was sold as is, where it is, and once it's off our property, it was. I think we were tempted. So he did call me the next day and said he's taking it in to have the transmission looked at, and he wanted me to agree to help pay for transmission repairs. I said I'm not in favor of that, but I would certainly bring it to the board and for discussion. But I think it's an old vehicle. We made no promises as to the condition. So I haven't heard back from him in the last couple of days, so I'm hoping that it worked out okay for him. But also received a call from the second place bid, and that person is still interested in the vehicle. So
Did you get my guy's number?
we did, as a matter of fact. So if you hear something where I told him he's perfectly welcome to come to the board and to talk, but my recommendation would be that we're done with that vehicle.
Just a question, was the buyer a citizen of the district?
He is not. No. And that's all I have.
Great. Chief Dickerson.
Okay, operations report, June 2019. Total of 96 calls for May this year, which is up a little bit. In my dark little sense of humor, I always really hope to break 100 because 100 is a good round number and the statistics come out of it really well. Crews are doing great. 9 fires, 56 medical, 8 service calls, 17 good intent, and 4 false alarms. We have 11 overlapping calls with 1 triple call, so 3 calls that fire crews are out on at the same time. So really running and gunning. We're at 306 calls for the year, which is up about 50 from where we were at last year. Again, the fire loss for May in 2019 is still reporting at 0. That is a problem with the state reporting software. I'm working with Chief House to kind of develop into our own image trend and investigating some of the costs there so we can get some more accurate reporting, not only for the data, but when we send NIFRs off to the National Fire Academy, I'd like to see it go there. Average number of firefighters per incident total is 12. On our multi-alarm, we had 14, which was shown, we like to put 12 people on scene at least for a structure fire, and we're getting 14, and 9 on. We were at 9 on last year at this time. Times keep coming down. We're at 7.8 minutes. We're doing much better on times. Percentages are running right where we should be. You will notice there's a spike in our rescue to 53.92. That comes from our priority medical calls that we're running on. doing a lot better on that, working closely with Western Lane Ambulance, getting them some well-needed help. Those calls are the life-threatening calls, and we've developed a response protocol that's going to keep the costs good and provide the proper help on that. Other than that, I have the standard graphs that I provide the board with for our calls and volumes. Training department, as Chief Schick said, was very busy with the structure fire burn. Captain Larson and I recertified as a live fire instructor to make sure that Captain Larson was certified as a training instructor for live fires. Live fire certification is new. It's coming down from the state. I've been certified in it for some time. It's good to refresh my things. This was a free class ranked by the state. So he went to that, and it's really stepped up our training procedures, and he's been able to roll that into some of the other things, and we saw a lot safer and better training situation for that live fire. So I think it was really good. Training always busy. Prevention also always busy. I think I see Tony Captain Miller for about 30 seconds a day when he stops in and says, "Hey, I'm going to do this," and he's off and running, and he's doing great stuff. A lot of the hotel motel inspections and middle school bus barn inspections are getting done. We are having State Fire Marshal assist with some of that, so Tony can learn the paperwork a little better, and he will soon be studying up for his tests so that we won't have the State Fire Marshal here. He'll be on his own. So he's doing great. Recruitment and retention, I got the report for you. Facilities, we are getting older and we're working on our things. Station 1 we had all our things replaced that were problem with the sprinkler system. Apparatus bay hood and the well pump at Station 3 went out again, so we're investigating that to see how we can get that figured out. CO and 4-gas monitors arrived. They're in a calibration schedule, and the bunker gear pricing for the safer gear is no longer pricing that we moved ahead on that so that we could get the order in. That's a 90-day wait to get the orders to start in on that. Really backed up at this time of year. Everybody's trying to push their order in, so that'll be coming up. Lots of apparatus stuff. We're also scheduling the hose testing. EMS has been an awesome response. The CST team has been very, very busy. 11 calls for actual community support, 11 for supporting personnel that was outside of fire and EMS response, and they committed 4 trainings, lots of hours there. Lori has applied to a class, and we have an opportunity to have that class grant funded as well. Just wanted to make the board aware that there may be some grant funding coming in that'll cover the cost for that class. It's not a huge class, but it's an excellent opportunity. It's a class for actually responding to responders, not so much in the communities for fire and EMS and police professionals. Other than that, tons of things in the report. Are there any questions, comments, concerns, praise?
Good job.
Okay, Chief House.
I'm going to be a little bit shorter than Chief Dickerson. Very important. Our total call volume for May last year was 287. This year we're at 318, which is 11% increase. And I've changed things on reporting it. Now you get quarterly reporting for the totals versus every month. So in July you can expect a quarterly report on where we're at, averaging per annual. In new business, there's a resolution, and just following up the conversation to that is about approving the ambulance rates increasing to the out-of-district residents. Follow up to Chief Schick's with the GMT, 95% done with the paperwork, the cost of the report with it. So the deadline for us to have that into the PCG was July 1st, and I'm pretty much all completely done with it and just waiting for some final feedback. MIH program still doing really well. She saw more patients this year than she did Chris did last year by 8. It may not seem like a lot, but with one employee, that's actually a pretty significant number. Had a sidebar conversation with Mr. Hawkins of Peace Health and the funding. He said that most likely, and I say most likely under quotes, we'll be getting $50K after July 1 to fill that void in our budget that we've identified. Training reports, vehicle reports, and CST reports all included. Any questions?
No. No questions? Okay. Matt, great report. Thank you for the organization of the packet. And think you're up if you have anything else on the manager's report.
All right, so Life Med, when I put in this report, bless you. When I put in this report on Friday, we were at about 1,300 memberships, but as of today, we're over 1,500. So they're coming in strong. Starting to actually taper off a little bit, but we've got quite a few coming in. And I really want to give a shout out and a high five to Holly and Mary and Laura. They've done a fantastic job because it is a pile. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but when it comes in, they've had actually 100 in a stack to process in a day, and they've done a great job. So thank you.
Ooh, good job. Yeah.
Let's see, I also sent out welcome letters to the new directors, and they will be sworn in at the July 25th board meeting, but I think we're going to be talking a little bit more about that in a few minutes. I have them registered for the SDAO board training on August 7th in Newport. There are a variety of these trainings available during August, and Director Green, I've registered you for Cottage Grove on the 22nd, but this is available to anyone. So if any of the existing board members want to get a refresher, just let me know. Kathy Taylor will be here on Monday, just for the day, to meet with Chief and I, and she will also attend our managers meeting just to review financials, take a look at the end of fiscal year. I've got kind of a long list of things to address. Some questions I have, still doing a little bit of cleanup from the past. And working on, well, I was working on, but I think I pretty much got you most of the job descriptions for the third entity. Starting to work on admin staff evaluations now. Chief and I met with Jeff Griffin with WHA Insurance to discuss workers' comp policies, and after his evaluations, we're staying with the same policies. We'll be staying with special districts for SVFR and SAFE for Western Lane. Three SVFR employees will receive a $1,200 contribution into their VIVA. I just wanted to put this in my notes because you'll see it next month on the financials. And this was promised by Chief Langford when he actually, quite a long time ago, in January of 2018, when we switched from the MERP to the VIVA program, he has said if there was anything left in the MERP from 2017, it would be put into their accounts. So out of the 9 full-time employees who were here at the time, 3 used up all of theirs, 3 are no longer here, and 3 did not use any of it. So
What's MERP stand for again?
Excuse me?
What's MERP stand for again?
Medical Expense Reimbursement Program.
And VIVA replaced.
And VIVA replaced it.
Okay.
We upgraded internet to Station 1 on June 11th. I don't know if anybody has been able to tell a difference. I would say no because of Director Farnsworth dropping off. But, and so one of my next big projects is to work on sending out an RFQ for IT services. We still are contracted through Lynn Council of Governments for IT services, but there's a lot of good IT companies out there. I just want to see, get some quotes in and see how competitive they are with what we have going and see if it's worth making a change. All of the LB50 budget documents have been sent to the county. The deadline is July 15th, but I got them in. And still going to work a little bit on, we adopted the budgets, but they were just in spreadsheet form. We kind of want to pretty them up a little bit. I don't know if we'll go to the extent of what they were last year with 58 pages, but we at least want to have a nice cover and maybe some general information about the community, because I found that document very helpful when I started working here. So, and we're still working on the SAFR grant reimbursements. And I also wanted to add that we can upload any document you want to this onboard software under resources. Just sent out the collective bargaining agreements today. But anything, you just let me know if you want anything in there. I can put IGA, strategic plans, budgets, whatever you want. That's a good place to put that. So just let me know if you need anything.
I think those documents that you just mentioned would be great ones to have at our fingertips if we want it.
Sure.
Budgets, IGA, plan, charters.
Right,
So,
can do.
yeah.
We'll work on that. That's all I have.
What do you have left on the SAFER grant?
Well, we have still this one reimbursement that's pending that we're still working out. The details on, it's about close to between 65 and 70,000 for the gear and exams from the previous, from like a year ago, the academy, we had a large academy. When people come in and they're interested in the academy, we start working on getting their backgrounds and their physicals in, but it staggers over a large period of time. So out of all these invoices over like a year, we may have 2 or 3 were on this invoice and 2 or 3 were on that invoice. So what we're doing is going back and making sure that we're not overlapping the exams and the physicals and the gear. We're making sure we're seeing who got what, when. Did that already go into a previous reimbursement? Yes or no? No, yes, that would go into this reimbursement. So that's what we're working on right now. Sure.
Something to add on that really quick. As we started to roll that out, there was a lot of hands in the mix. Dina and I have sat down together and created some spreadsheets, and FEMA seems to like that spreadsheet. So we're tracking things on that spreadsheet now, so we're keeping it a lot clearer than it was. And the reimbursements, I believe Dina and I are going to set up on a quarterly instead of, well, we think we should do one now. So we're getting it straightened out.
I think the next item on our agenda says new business SVFR only, but it actually is both districts, is that correct?
Oh, it certainly is. Sorry about that.
So I think it's the same issue, same response, so if we want to address both of them at the same time, we'll just move ahead.
So I put an agenda bill in your packet. There really isn't a whole lot to report on this because I sent out RFPs to 9 audit firms and got one back for both districts. And it's Emerald CPA Group out of Eugene. I've worked with them before. They're a good firm. They quoted $10,000 for each district with no increase in fees over 3 years, unless something came up and it was a mutual agreement that there would be an additional fee for some reason. So I also wanted to mention that we were under a contract with Chris Marr for Western Lane 1 more year, and that has been canceled. We did take a look at the contract. We got in touch with the attorney for Western Lane just to make sure that, see if there was anything real binding in that. And he said, no, looks pretty straightforward. We've paid him all of his fees. So we just sent us, we drew up a letter with the chief's name on it and sent it off. He should have received that on Monday. I should also point out that he did not submit any, quotes for the audit for SVFR, so that's where we're at. You have the proposals in your packets. If you, I don't know why.
What was the length of the engagement for your prior employment? How long did they provide services there?
3 years.
3 years.
And that's what confused me with Western Lane is because we had already done 3 years. And we'd only done 2 years with SVFR. Mm-hmm. So when I got in touch with Chris Marr's office, I said, well, we've already done the 3 years. And so all I need is the contract for SVFR. And they said, well, we don't have a contract. We don't do the contracts anymore. I said, oh, okay. Oh, but we do have one for Western Lane, and we have 1 more year. And I thought, well, that's weird. So it was a 4-year contract.
And I did state that clearly. So Emerald CPA Group that provided service for the port.
Yes.
How long did they provide that service?
I worked with them for at least 3 years, if not longer. I think we even retained them for longer after that. And
It says that 5 on here, it says 5-year audit engagement. So
okay.
The record says 5.
Okay.
That's good.
Didn't see that.
Yeah.
A lot of great public entity engagement experience. So, and the one proposal we had.
So it's a 3-year or 5-year?
It would be a 3-year engagement,
Okay. And
but
no
there would
price.
be a clause in there that if something were to come up, there would be a way out if we needed to change gears and go a different direction for some reason. But we would draw up that letter of engagement, and they usually provide a letter of engagement with us from each year as we move forward.
And it was 10,000 a year?
10,000 for SVFR and for Western Lane.
And what does that compare to with Chris Moore?
Well, Chris Marr had quoted around 7,500 to 8,000 over a 3-year period, but last year we paid 13,000 for Western Lane and 11 or 12, I think, for SVFR.
We budgeted 10 this year.
Right.
So it's right on. I'm assuming too that we would engage them for the audit too.
Yes.
And have they, you haven't talked about how much that would cost or any of that?
When we talked to Chris, he said with it being an entity, the way it's structured, they would still have to, in the event Chris did the audit, they would still need to do A, B, C, D, and F, you know, like they do these 2 audits. So it would come in at around $8,000 to $9,000.
Any thoughts on what Emerald will, you think they may do better by us on that since we're new with them? It just seems like it would be much, it doesn't seem quite as complicated as
Right.
the other 2, but I don't know why it would be the same amount of money. It seems like it should be about half that.
Well, I understand what you're saying, and I'll get in touch and I'll let you know.
Or do you think Chris Moore would pay for it?
So I'm hearing too that we don't really have references or anything, but your experience with them was fine.
That was very good.
So that's a good reference right there, so we'll take that. I think personally, I think that price is pretty darn good. I mean, we used to do audits and municipal audits, and you've seen how thick they end up and all the stuff they have to put in them. And I think that's a good value. They've got a great list of entities they've worked with, governmental, and I don't see any issues. And we're lucky to get that kind of quote. Anybody have any questions? Any further?
Any questions from Titusville Valley? Fire.
Do you need do we need to appoint the auditor?
Yes, I believe a motion is in order.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the proposal from Emerald?
I'd make a motion to accept the proposal from Emerald to provide audit services for the year 2019, fiscal year 2019 through 2021.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that one.
All right. We have a first and second. Any further discussion on the motion? So we have a roll call, please.
Director Russell?
Yes.
Director Childs?
Yes.
Director Farnsworth? Director Webb?
Yes.
Director Yesney?
Yes.
All right, any discussion further for the Titusville Valley Fire Board on proposal for accounting services, audit services? If not, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, with enthusiasm.
Almost.
All in favor to accept the 3-year audit proposal from Emerald CPA Group, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
So new business Western Lane on the resolution to raise the ambulance rates. And we went over this last meeting, I think. So this is to approve the resolution. You want to give us a quick background on that?
The paramedics, so when we're looking at ways of capturing additional revenue, we identified that the commercial or independent paramedics has captured almost 100% for revenues. And so we did a little bit more digging, and we saw that essentially roughly during the summer, 10 cases a month. So then tried to extract with the data, roughly $70,000 of revenue that we're missing out on by not increasing the rates. These rates of increase weren't just blind. We did research and looked at a comparable of Hood River, which has the same district, same population base, and used them as kind of a foundation. Also looked at Bend, which is a much larger district, but with how they set it up and everything, it gives us a really good foundation to move forward with. Any other questions?
And these would just be for out of district?
Out of district. It doesn't impact anything with our residents.
Okay. And so tonight we have a resolution. It's in the packet. Is there any further discussion? I think we had a great discussion at the last meeting on that as well. Hearing none, would somebody like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2019-06?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept resolution number 2019-06.
Do we have a second?
Oh, I'll second it.
All right. We have a first and a second. Do we have any further discussion on the resolution? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Director Russell?
Yes.
Director Childs?
Yes.
Director Farnsworth? Director Webb?
Yes.
Director Yesney?
Yes. Thanks for that work, Matt.
All right, for either board, is there anything that we would like to address this evening that is not on the agenda? I would just raise that Director Burns, well, in a technical sense, interim Director Burns just made me aware that there was a document that we had him sign as secretary, and he took over the spot of Woody, but I don't think he was secretary, so I don't know if it's critical that we have that re-signed. We cannot recall what it was.
It's been about 2 months ago, one of the first meetings I was there.
And, yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I can, let me look into it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we did appoint, at least on an interim basis, Director Hickson as secretary after the fact, but just throw that out
Don't
there.
skip by us.
Yeah.
It had the Chiefs raise on it.
I did not.
Since he's a lottery winner, he just.
So I think once more on behalf of all of us, to Directors Carnahan, Phillips, and Director Childs, again, thank you for your wonderful service. You guys have done a great job contributing to the organization where we're at right now, going into next year. And really, it's been fun getting it. It's been actually, the joint meetings have been great, getting to know everybody. And so thank you for your service. Appreciate it.
Yeah, what he said. Thank you very much.
I just want to say, we need to look at where we are now. We can look back and see where we were, but we're full speed ahead. And it's really a good thing. I think we're heading in the right direction. We've got a good new chief. We've got a lot of good things working for us. Thank you.
Thanks. Anything else? What do you think, Ron?
Well, I'd like to announce the next meeting,
Okay.
July 25th.
Oh, do we want to have a little discussion, because we've heard several of our board members will be out of town.
Oh.
Cindy will be traveling back. John Murphy won't be here to be sworn in. He'll be out of town too, John. Mike will be out of town. So, I guess the choice is we could run with a possible quorum from our side, but do we want to, we won't be able to swear Director Murphy in. So would anybody entertain looking at a different date, or should we do a dual poll and see if we can move it up a week? And is that okay with staff?
We have a similar situation. I believe we'll have a quorum, but incoming Director Spade will not be in town. So he won't be here to be sworn in either.
He won't be here for a while. Even if you moved it up, he's gone.
He's back like the middle of August.
Yeah. So I think we could do a quorum, but I think Director Russell will be in transit that day, right?
Depends on when
Yeah.
you get out of class.
Get out of class.
Traveling.
K-4. Might be on vacation. So we could have a quorum, but it'll be tight.
Was was the date, the 17th?
17th and
Week before?
18th,
Yeah,
move it up a week.
I think Larry's.
The 18th is Larry's.
Eighteenth is
So
Larry's.
we can have a meeting at the,
Restobar.
at
Oh,
the
you are?
Restobar.
Yeah, that's okay.
How about the 17th?
You come.
Would there be a consideration to push that a week after, like the 30th?
It's a Tuesday.
Either direction.
31st.
What's works best for the staff?
31st.
30th.
Because they're the ones that have to put it together.
Dina won't be here on the 30th.
Okay. Here, here's heads up on, oh, Dino will be here. Oh, big grin.
31st?
Pardon?
31st, are you gone past the Wednesday?
On that week.
Gone that week.
Tony said he'd be happy to stick around for a couple more months.
Well, then back to the 17th.
Okay, 17th,
6 p.m. on a Wednesday night.
We can get a quorum here. Can you guys do a quorum?
We would need to talk with.
17th? Okay, 17th is good for
You
everybody.
said
You'll be okay? Yeah,
We don't know for certain, but we'll check.
okay, okay.
Is everybody familiar with Doodle Poll? I could do that.
Yeah.
Everything's beautiful.
In its own way.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
I think we're reaching the time to adjourn this meeting. So here we go.
Okay, so we'll do a doodle poll, and it sounds like we have a couple of dates. All right. Adjourn.